Hello quilty friends and welcome back to my channel. My name's Rachel and I make videos about quilting and my creative life, and today's video is on confetti crumb quilting. So this is a sewing machine mat that my sister made me with lots of crumbs that I had saved from various projects, and she's quilted it and put a binding on it, and today I'm going to show you how she did this. So if you do enjoy today's video, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave me a comment letting me know if this is something that you're going to try. Anywhere that you can find me on the web is listed down below, where you can stay up to date with what I'm making pretty much daily on Instagram and TikTok, and you can also find me for exclusive content over on my Patreon account. So let's jump right in. So some of the things that you will need. This project is made with foam wadding, and this is just a random piece that I had left over, and I thought, right, I'm going to use that, and I'm going to make this project sort of like a placemat size rather than doing anything larger. You can go as large as you like, so machine cover, a coaster, anything that you like, mug rug. The world is really your oyster, but it gives lots of nice dimension when you use the foam. But you can use regular wadding. The results might be just very slightly different in the fact that it might not have as much dimension as the example that I'll show you today. You'll also need a fabric for the back. I'm choosing this fat quarter, although I don't think I'll use a whole fat quarter, but how big of a piece you need for the back will obviously depend on how big you make the project. Then you need a whole lot of crumbs. So I have been saving my Liberty crumbs that would otherwise go in the bin. So we've got these. I would usually put that in the bin, and I do feel guilty because it's gorgeous fabric, but you know, sometimes when you're cutting, let's say hexagons, you do get this little bit of waste. So I've been sticking it here in this organza bag that's just next to my sewing machine, and I've got absolutely loads in here. So I'm going to use this. Some of them are bigger, so I'll show you how to manage that during the tutorial. I have got this stored in one of those organza bags that you get from the wool warehouse. This is perfect to reuse for the top covering, because what you need to do is you need to put some type of netting, organza or tulle over the top. So you can use a bag like this. This is an organza bag. This is what my sister used on my one, and it's just very, very fine netting. This was actually cut out of a petticoat. It was one layer too long, so I cut the whole layer off. But I've also got some pink tulle, which I think I'm going to use today, or some purple one. Both of these were purchased from Birmingham Rag Market many, many years ago. I don't know what I was using them for at the time, but I think I'll use the pink today. It's not going to give much of a pink. Even the purple wouldn't give much of a tint. It's just going to look very slightly off-white, and in fact you really can hardly see it. In fact, you can really hardly see it once it's on top of the fabric. And then of course you'll need some fabric for the binding. I would recommend a 3-inch binding strip rather than 2.5 inch, because of the dimension of the foam it might be a little bit hard to get everything round. So having a little bit extra binding would just make it a little bit neater. And I'm pretty sure somewhere in my stash I cut a whole bunch of 3-inch strips, so I'll probably use that, but I'll match the binding once I've seen how the fabric comes out, because you're just never quite sure on what colours will present themselves in the project. So we'll get started. So the first thing that I've done is cut my back in, and you want that right sides down, and then you want to put your wadding over the top. And then I've got my tulle, and this, everything is cut slightly larger than the foam, and you'll trim it all down at the end. So all you're going to do is just smooth it out and clip it or pin it together at the edges, because what you're going to do is sew round 3 of the edges. So then you want to make sure everything is smooth front and back. Okay, so it's not that smooth around this edge, so I'm just gonna readjust my pins. I have spray basted the back fabric, but we still want it to be nice and smooth at the edge. There we go, nice and smooth. So now what you're going to do is put this through the sewing machine and sew about about an eighth to a quarter of an inch away from the edge, just somewhere that you know it will be covered by the binding in the finish. So just round these 3 sides and just sew that shut with a straight stitch. I'm just going to give all of this excess just a bit of a trim off now, just so that the extra tool isn't in the way. Now you might have noticed that I wasn't using my walking foot, and I won't be using my walking foot to quilt it. The main reason being is obviously the walking foot would be of great benefit on this project, but the teeth will pull on the netting on the top, so I don't want it to cause any issues with the netting. Now is where all the fun starts, and you can get out all of your scraps. So I'm just going to pull. If I've got some that are nice contrasting colours, I'm going to make sure that they're all included. So if your scraps are already quite small, you don't need to do this, but some of mine are quite big and I don't want a whole strip like that just included, so you can just slice through it. So just go to town. Obviously be careful with your fingers and things, but just literally slice through the piles. Be careful of everything. That was actually a lot of fun, just to slice up all of those scraps. Like I say, if you've already got small pieces, then that's absolutely fine. But for me, I just shove everything in a bag. Some of them are still good sizes. Some of them are small. And this also means that you'll get a nice colour distribution across the whole project. Again, if that's what you want. But I think it gives a really nice, just interesting look. Now you need to bring back over your little sleeve. So you should have an opening here, and you can start putting the fabrics in here. So you might want to just start off just putting them in randomly. And then what you can then do is once they're in there, you can then fine tune what's on the top layer. Because you've got no backing fabric here, you do need to make sure that there's obviously at least one layer. So in some places you might need to have a good lump of scraps in there. And then you can smooth it all out and things like that, because there might be a little bit of shifting. You don't want to lay them out just exactly in one single layer, because when you're quilting it there might be a little bit of shifting, but it's quite secure, you know, nothing's moving there. But yeah, lay it out in more than a single layer. A little bit of a messy job. But then what you can do is just fine tune it and make it look nice. Make sure that some of the nice prints are facing up. Or if you have any designs where it's got like flowers on or like little motifs, you can fussy cut those out and put them standing up as well. So all I'm going to do now is make sure that they're all the way up to the edges. But this line, don't forget, will be more than covered by the binding. So if you've got a little gap, your binding will cover it, because we're going to do nice wide binding. And then you can just finesse your pieces and make sure they're positioned how you like. I've also decided to add these cute little Care Bears into it. So like I say, you can do any type of fussy cutting that you like, but I thought they matched the pinks and purples really well, and it'll just add a little bit of interest. You can do that with any type of motif, flowers, anything that you want to cut out. So now what we need to do is seal up this edge first of all, and then we can begin the quilting. I'm going to do a crosshatch quilting. I'm not sure how far apart. I'll do it maybe ½ an inch apart. I'll probably use the side of the presser foot as a guide, and I will mark the whole line with masking tape. You can use any quilt design you want or any colour thread that you want as well. I'm going to use white thread just so that it sinks into the background a little bit, kind of becoming invisible hopefully. This is it all quilted now. It's got so much dimension. I hope that it's picking that up. It should do on the camera. I really like how everything just blends together. All of the fabrics just sort of mash together. Doesn't it look really cool? You can barely see the outlines on the bears in some places, like here. You can barely see it, kind of a little bit there. I think it depends what fabric they're positioned against. This is how the back looks. You can see how textured it is. It's wonderful. This will make a great placemat or just somewhere to set things down. So I'm now going to go ahead and trim everything down, and then I've got this fabric. I know it's a bit bright, but I think it needs a little bit of a pop of a colour. This is 3 inches, I believe. I've just measured it and it's 2.5. This was leftovers from a border that I didn't use on a quilt, so I do want to use this because it's already cut and I do think the colours go nicely. This is a Liberty quilting cotton. I'll attach the binding slightly differently and I'll show you that in just a moment. So when I'm doing the binding, normally I would fold it over so that it's doubled and then stitch that down and fold it back. But it's not going to be a lot, like I said at the beginning, to get round the thickness. So all I'm going to do is just lay it on like this, sew it on with a generous seam allowance, because as you can see, I've got some blank bits. I don't think I'll be able to cover all of that unless I trim that off. I might need to. I've trimmed a little bit here, but now looking at that, that's a little bit high, so I'm just going to trim it. It's no problem at all. Nothing's going to come unravelled because you've got your quilting stitches there, and then you're going to do the seam for the binding over the top, so don't worry about trimming it if you need to. Just do it with a nice straight edge. So back to it, I'm going to use a generous seam allowance and I'm literally just going to stitch it like so. You do the same thing when you get to the corner, and then when we fold it over we'll have double the amount to play with. So then when we get to this edge, you'll just fold it under there and fold it under, so you have a lot more to play with doing it this way. And I do like doing this for smaller projects, gives you a bit of a wider binding. I like to start with mine folded in here so that we can get a nice join. So just position that, and all I'm going to try and do is keep everything straight to the edge. And then as I'm approaching the corner, I'm keeping my finger right here so I know where the edge is, because of course you can't actually see it. Then you stitch towards the corner. I always do a back stitch just in case I need to cut the thread for any reason. Okay, bring everything up, rotate, put your binding this way, do a normal mitered corner, It's annoying that that's right on the corner, but it won't make a difference. Here we go, then this is how it will look. So you folded that down to make a triangle, so we can trim this, give a little bit, about an inch or so after the start of that. And then when you flip it over, that will have a nice join. It actually pattern matches quite nicely. And then your corners will be nicely mitered. I'm going to hand stitch it to the back because I'll only be catching the fabric. I won't be going into the foam, so it won't be too strenuous. So all you do is you just fold it down like that, fold it back. It leaves you a nice wide binding on the back, so you've got plenty to play with, but also we've got nice even binding on the front, because that's what my sister said with the one that she made me here that's just under the machine. She made her binding quite thin, so in places where she's had to pull to struggle to get it over the thickness, it's gone a little bit curvy, which obviously I don't mind at all. It's beautiful that she made me that, but just to make the binding a little bit easier, just make it wider, whether you use this technique of binding or whether you use like even 3.5 inch, the wider the better, and then you can just hand stitch it to the back. The reason I'm not machine stitching it is because I would machine stitch in the ditch here and it would be about there on the back of the binding, so we want it to be nice and flush. I really enjoy using these clips for binding. And just make sure that you're not pulling it too tight. When you get to the corners, you just start your new side and then make this a mitered corner just by tucking the one down and pulling it up until it meets in a nice triangle. Put a clip, and there we go. So I always place my knot so that the knot is going to be hidden underneath. So there we go, the knot can just get tucked away underneath. And then you're just going to take perpendicular stitches all the way underneath. This is called an applique stitch. And you're just coming up very slightly into the binding thread. And you just continue like that all the way along. It is a really relaxing stitch. And it doesn't take too long to do a project of this size. So there we have it, my finished placemat or mini quilt, however you wish to use this. I'm not sure where I'm going to put it yet, but I just love the quilting lines on it. The quilting lines are just amazing. Even though they're not 100% even, you don't notice really, do you? And then that's the back. And just all of the gorgeous fabrics. I think it's wonderful. I think because the fabrics are very much similar colours, they do all blend into one another and just create like a watercolour background, which is what I thought would happen, because when you often put Liberty and Liberty together, that's the type of effect that you get. And then those little bears just really add to the overall design. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that you will give it a try. I also wanted to say that if perhaps you used normal wadding, you could even turn this into a pouch. You probably still could with the foam, but this gets quite thick and dimensional. You could see that I was just stuffing handfuls of scraps in there, so you do use quite a bit. So just go slowly on your machine when you're doing the quilting, but I didn't have any issues at all. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care, bye bye.